Commissioner Poole, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Lord, for the blessings you've bestowed upon our community. We ask that you continue to guide us to make correct and good decisions for the citizens of this community. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Cresser, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Lockhart?
Here.
Ms. Lloyd? Here. Ms. Klein? Here. Mr. Murray?
Here.
Mr. Poole?
Here.
Mr. Brady? Here. Mr. Waddington?
Here.
Commissioners, you have before you the minutes of our meeting of October 23, 2017. What is your pleasure?
Chairman,
Waddington.
I move that we accept the minutes of the October 23rd meeting and dispense with the formal reading.
Second.
Been a motion and second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, the motion is approved. We have two presentations tonight, and the first is from the Sandusky Bicentennial Commission. Mr. Jim Miller, from the CEO and Chairman of the Board of Savista, makes his way to the podium to begin that presentation. I just wanted to offer a word of thanks to the Sandusky voters for their participation over the last month or so in the election process. Thank them for the support which they have shown this commission and the direction of the city. We are all deeply grateful for them, and we are ready to roll up our sleeves and get to work for the next 4 years. So thank you very much. Mr. Miller.
Good afternoon, everybody. Since this is here, I must be running my slides, right? Okay. We're here to talk a bit about what's going on with the bicentennial, kind of give you an update and give you a little more detail than what you may have heard so far. The first slide here, our involvement with the community. We're going to have a number of historical items going on. First one we call Bicentennial Banter. There are going to be programs at the museums, the libraries. We have an elder college that will be going on out to Bowling Green. These topics will include our various industries that were in town through the years, famous people that came through town for the over the years, the Underground Railroad. We've got just a depth of historical information that we're going to share all throughout the year. We're going to have walking tours, and these walking tours are going to start early in the year and go clear through fall, and primarily downtown. We'll take people around and show them the different buildings, the history behind the buildings, what's going on with the buildings. The Historical Society is putting together a program where we're trying to get the owners to put some plaques on the buildings to recognize the original ownership. So that should be interesting. We will have a number of times we'll have Dollar Museum Days where all our museums will be open to the public for $1. I think that'll be popular. The 4th of July celebration, the history exhibit at Adams Junior High. You know, there are always a lot of people downtown when we have our 4th of July celebration, so we're going to get the old cafeteria at Adams and open it up because the people will be right there, and get the museums in town and some of the organizations to do some very limited programming, some exhibits. I know we talked at the Maritime Museum about having something rolling on a big screen so people can come in and out and see it without having to get tied down and wait for a specific presentation. So that should be good. We're also partnering with the Masons. It's their 200th anniversary in Trinity Church. It'll be their 200th anniversary. So there'll be quite a bit going on from a historical perspective all through the year. Lee? Here's your slide.
Is that my slide up there?
There's your slide.
Okay. Well, I'll talk quickly a little bit about the community events. And first I want to say that one of our goals since we started working on the bicentennial was to create events that would involve as many people. We wanted to reach as many people in our community as possible and involve them. We've asked them to help with us. So there's a lot of these things that we're talking about today or tonight are the results of a lot of people putting in a lot of time and effort and making suggestions and vetting them through our committee. So being inclusive was very important to us. One of our big key signature events will be a Founders Day Parade that's scheduled for Saturday, August 18th, and we're very excited about that. Inviting people home, kind of like a homecoming. We have set a community watch night, which will be early in the evening on New Year's Eve. We're working on Heritage Sundays with the local churches, an art festival, service days where we can involve a lot of the students in the communities. It's really important for them to be involved in this also. We're also working on some curriculum to help educate the students on what Sandusky's history is. We're looking to do a whiteout, which is a large community photo, a chalk event downtown, bringing artists and students together. And then another big event will be the day after Founders Day on Sunday, August 19th, which will be a bicentennial Fireland Symphony Orchestra, big free event for the entire town. And we're looking to have some very special guests at that too.
Okay, I'll give you that back.
Thank you.
I don't want to read from your notes, I'll get messed up here. Okay. Looking at community involvement and some of the things that are going on, these will either be events during that time or lasting legacy items. First off, we're going to have a bicentennial ball. If those of you that are old enough remember the lamplighters over at Cedar Point, we're going to have a real event. It'll be in the Cedar Point Ballroom. How many people does that hold, Leanne? Okay, about 800 people. It'll be partial fundraiser to help pay for all of this. And this should be a neat event. Legacy projects, we've got public art. As you know, there are a lot of citywide beautification programs going on and a lot of infrastructure projects that we hope to see happen during 2018. Of course, we'll have the Festival of Sail, and you'll hear more about that in just a bit. And then the winter kickoff, to try to get people involved January, February, and March, when it's going to be a little cold and icy around here. We all know that. We're working with Bowling Green and the students to try to come up with some winter festivities. Now, down at the Maritime Museum, we have the Ice Festival and some things like that. We're going to try to expand through a lot of different organizations and have more events as we move into the new year.
Just to add a little bit of information on the ball, that's scheduled for April 28th. That's the last Saturday in April before Cedar Point opens. It'll be in the ballroom. Again, we're going to have a band in there. Obviously, it'll be a little more contemporary than the bands from in the 1900s. But this should be a big special event. One of the things, the goal of this event was it has to be a fundraiser because we have to pay for a lot of the things that are going on. So again, we're already out selling sponsorships for this, for the people that would like to help contribute to the entire bicentennial by supporting the gala. So we're going to have some ticketing information coming soon. There will be I think a press announcement in early December to give you more details, but we're really looking forward to that. If any of you have ever been up in the ballroom before for any event, it's just iconic and truly the biggest venue in Sandusky. So we're anxious to get in there, and there's a committee working on decorating it and all. It's going to be gorgeous. So we hope you'll be able to join us. And we'll turn things over to Craig.
Hi there, I'm Craig Samborski. I'm producing the Festival of Sail. So July 12th through 15th, we're really excited to bring a fleet of really cool historic tall ships here. We did a small event in 2016, I think it was, with just 3 ships. It was a lot of fun, a lot of success. This year we plan on bringing at least 6 ships in, probably a couple of international Class A ships as well. I don't know much about the Dollar Museum days. I don't know if somebody else wants to talk about that. Okay, all right. So the main festival location is going to be on the Jackson Street Pier. We'll also be closing off Shoreline Drive to accommodate some of our additional vendors that will be a little bit outside the perimeter of our event. We're going to have some of the ships at the Mig Street Pier, the ships that do the day sail experiences, like General Patton's schooner, the Bloodhound, which is coming from Key West, Madeline, which is coming from Traverse City. We're also working on a low discount to all of the Erie County residents, as this is really all of your community, their community. The events are, intended for the locals. So we're working on a discount. I'm working with Mackenzie on that to provide that. So anybody that has a zip code within Erie, Ottawa County will get a discount for the event. I don't know, that doesn't look like a tall ship. That looks like a lot like a big duck. So the big duck is going to be here as well. I'm sure everybody knows about that big duck. It'll be here with a couple of its babies. We had a lot of success with it this summer in Canada, and we're looking really forward to bringing it here. I think it's going to look pretty iconic on the Sandusky shoreline to have something that big that really kind of looks out of place, but it really isn't. I've been doing, I think this is going to be my 11th Tall Ship Festival when we do Sandusky. We typically have an economic impact somewhere between $10 and $15 million. Duluth, Minnesota, where I live, where we do the festival, is about a $16 million economic impact, and that's the hotels, the restaurants, the bars, the retail shops. We build the hours of our event from like 9 to 5, so people, when they're done with our event, can go downtown, can spend money with local businesses, which helps the tax base and in turn brings some sales tax revenue into the city. As far as our marketing, our visitor base, we market the event nationally. We have a pretty, I guess, mature marketing program through Google AdWords. We have found that there's people around the country that will come to this festival. In Duluth, where I live, I think we're on our maybe 4th time around doing that festival. We sell tickets in all 50 states and all 10 Canadian provinces. When we did Tall Ships Los Angeles, we had people from 27 states. When we did Tall Ships Philadelphia, we had people from 39 states come. So in addition to wanting locals and people from the region to be at the event, we also want to market this to the country because we know there's people that will, A, come to see the duck, and B, come to see the duck. We're a huge fan of working with community groups and local businesses. So restaurants, hotels, museums, attractions, anything retail, anything we can promote this as a destination to our guests is welcome, and we'll put our arms around that and embrace it. Our event is a gated event, so as far as like having a security plan, there's a pretty extensive plan in place that we've used for the last 6 years for this. It's vetted by Homeland Security and the Coast Guard. We'll file the Coast Guard permit application in the next couple of weeks, and they'll come back to us with other local and regional law enforcement agencies to help make sure we've got a really secure event. And I think that's it for me. Any questions?
Commissioners, questions, comments? I want to thank the committee for all the work that you've been doing. Vice Head of Commission, excuse me. We put that together, Mr. Grady, almost 3 years ago.
Yeah, at least 3.
We all follow the minutes every month, and you've been making a remarkable amount of progress, really way more than we could have dreamed of. I stopped by a month ago, one of the meetings, just to kind of catch up with the flavor of what was going on, and it's really going to be a great celebration. Bring out the great aspects of our history, and it'll just be a lot of fun. So thank you for all that you're doing to make Sandusky, to make sure that all of us know that it's a special place and has special history. Thank you. So we go from this happy note to a more sober note. Mr. Bob Eglin is here from the Erie County Health Department to talk to us a little bit more about, we started this conversation a couple months ago, but talk a little bit more about what you're finding out there in terms of lead contamination and lead in homes. And I appreciate you being here, Mr. Eglin.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me here tonight, and it's not all bad news. There's good news as well. There are a lot of good things going on associated with our lead hazard control program at the Health Department. In 2016, we were funded for $1.5 million over a 3-year period to remove lead hazards from homes in Erie County and also in Lorain County, and also an additional $150,000 in Healthy Homes supplemental funding, which are for other hazards that are found in homes, whether they're electrical, fire, or falling, tripping hazards within a home. Also biological hazards, if there are issues that need to be addressed, we have funds that can do it. As long as a home has been approved for our HUD grant for the lead remediation program, they're also eligible for the $150,000 in funding. There's a cap for each unit, but we've been very successful this year. When we first got the grant back in September of 2016, it's kind of a monumental process getting the program started. I know Matt knows this. When you get a federal grant, there are all kinds of hoops that you have to jump through. I'll call them hoops. That's a nice word for them. But there are hoops that you have to jump through in order to implement the grant, in that there is documentation that needs to take place. We did that. There were piles and piles of that we had to submit to HUD. But we were able to get through that, and then lo and behold, in January of 2000 of this year, we started doing risk assessments, the inspections in homes that document the hazards. And our first project was actually completed in May of this year, and that was a monumental milestone in that we were finally doing the work. In the beginning, though, we'd lost one of our staff members, Greg Volz, who now works for the city. You guys stole him. I don't blame you for that. He's a great employee. But I had to train 2 new risk assessors to do the work that Greg was going to do, which was disappointing. But then again, Greg moved on to greener pastures. This chart I have up here actually demonstrates that the approval process for this program, in that those that qualify, the residents in the homes, have to be low to moderate income based on the Health and Human Services charts here for Erie County and, of course, Lorain County, because we do work there as well. So based on the number of household residents, you see that in the left-hand column there, you can see the income requirements that would approve someone for this program. We're in the green. It took a little while to get started. May, we had our first project completed, which was a milestone. These are construction projects. We're removing windows, we're encapsulating, peeling paint, we're enclosing surfaces where children play, where there are lead hazards. There's a lot involved in this, and there are federal requirements and there are state requirements that we have to comply with, but we've gotten up to speed, and now in 2017 we've actually completed 23 projects, and before the year we'll complete another 15. That's the estimate. Well, 15 have been done in Sandusky, 7 to 10 more will be done, and I hope 15. That's the number I hope for, but 7 to 10 is our conservative estimate that will complete before the end of the year. The lion's share of these are in the city of Sandusky, and it's easy because our home base is in Sandusky. We see the need is here, and also each of these projects have had healthy homes work done as well. We've replaced staircases that are falling or in dilapidated state. We've been able to replace carpeting that's soiled with animal waste. We've actually done work in homes where we've replaced electrical boxes that were antiquated and ancient and about to cause potentially a fire hazard. So these are the benefits of the program to date. By the end of the grant, we're projected, and we're obligated to finish 80 units within the city and within the county and within Lorain County. We're well on our way to do that. We're actually, by the end of this quarter, we predict we're going to be about 7 to 10 ahead of schedule, which is great. HUD thinks that looks great, and it's going to help us with our application when at the beginning of the year, when we submit a second application for $3.2 million in funding, which we also want to spend in Sandusky, in the majority of that money. I think we're going to be well positioned for that. This chart here, and actually, I was going to use my laser pointer, but I don't think it's going to work. I'll give it a try. I've been told it won't work, and that's the truth. I've got data here from 2015 to 2016. If you look at this left column, just by the dates there, that shows you the number of total tests, blood level tests, that were performed on children between the ages of birth and 6 within 44870, which is Perkins Township and Sandusky. And yet the good news is you can see significantly since we've gotten the grant, those numbers are going up. And they're going to go up even higher because the key to a successful program is testing children. If we want to identify where the children are being exposed and correct those things in their homes that are causing that exposure, we've got to test kids. And we're doing that, and those numbers are even going to go up from here. The other number I'd like you to refer to is this column here, third from the end. These are the number of children in Erie County, or in 44870, which is Perkins and Sandusky, who are actually lead poisoned. So there were 7 in 2017, 1 in 2016, and 3 in 2015. Those are the confirmed lead poisonings. Now the numbers that concern me even more, I mean, and those are concerning. Those are kids that need medical assistance, they need social assistance, and they're going to have issues for life. These children, they're probably, most of them are going through chelation therapy, which is a method of extracting the lead from the blood and the bones in the body. And that can take years to do successfully. We have cases that we've been working with that they were lead poisoned last year, they're lead poisoned this year. Their levels have come down significantly, but they're still above this 10 microgram per deciliter, which is considered the threshold. And it'll take years for those numbers to stabilize. These kids have been, I don't want to say damaged, but they have been neurologically damaged. They have health issues that are going to be with them for the rest of their lives. The other numbers that I'm kind of concerned about here, and the ones I want to point out and highlight tonight, right here, this second column, 3.3 to 4.9 micrograms per deciliter of blood. These are kids that have been exposed to lead. HUD tells us that normal background lead in a child's body is 0.08 micrograms per deciliter. So these children, they're confirmed exposures with a confirmed level that's below the case management level, which is 5 micrograms per deciliter of blood. Every child that's above 5 micrograms per deciliter of lead, they're on the radar. There's an individual at our health department that ODH is tasked with actually communicating with the parents and making sure they don't get up to 10. And with lead poisoning, it's cumulative. If a child's being exposed today and they're at a 3 or a 4 or a 5, tomorrow they could easily be at a 10 or a 12 or a 15. The way this works is it's in your blood, it's in your bones, and it accumulates over a period of time. And only with case management and removing them from the source of the exposure are you going to prevent those levels from increasing. These are the numbers we're concerned about, and they're relatively high. We've got 37 children in 2017 that basically, if we didn't have the HUD grant, we wouldn't have the funds to do the case management. We're actually doing case management on these children that normally would fall between the cracks because they're not at a 5 or above. So that's what we're focusing on, these children here, because if we can prevent them getting up to a 10, they won't have the lifelong issues. They may be having issues now that we're unaware of. They're so slight that they're imperceptible. We want to catch it before they get to the 5 and before they get to the 10 so they can live a long, healthy, happy life and reach their full potential. And of course, I threw a few other stats in here. 12% of the children in 2015 had some form of lead exposure. These are the ones that fall between the cracks. 14 in 2016 and 12% in 2017. Whiteman Weber Kids Festival was a great event. Our agency was there in full force on that day. We tested 90 children between birth and 6. Most of them were toddlers. We had a giveaway. We gave away 3 bicycles and 2 tricycles and gave away a lot of ice cream too. That's the way we convinced them to get the blood stick test. It's not pleasant. We poke them on the finger. They bleed a little bit. But we got the data here, and the thing that was surprising, 45% of the children that we tested had some form of lead exposure. 31 of the children that were in that category I described, where they fall between the cracks. They're not going to get case management. There's no follow-up, but we did the follow-up with these children because we knew if they're being exposed, there's a source of that exposure, and today, a result that's a 4, tomorrow could be a 10 easily. So we followed up with those families. The majority of these kids are Sandusky City residents. When we looked at the other slide and you saw 44870, I think some of those state numbers are a little bit diluted because much of the housing stock, or many of the homes that are in Perkins Township, there are a lot of new subdivisions. They were constructed after 1978. That's not the case in the city of Sandusky. Most of the homes were constructed prior to 1978. If there's lead-based paint in those homes, and in the majority of those homes, it's a safe bet if the home was constructed before 1950, definitely has lead-based paint in it. If those paint surfaces aren't maintained, there's a source of exposure for a child that lives within the city of Sandusky. So, one other thing I wanted to, the last little bullet here. There's a lot about Flint, Michigan in the newspaper, and it's horrible what happened in Flint, Michigan. But I can tell you from working with the city of Sandusky and working with all our water utilities in Erie County, I don't think that would ever happen here. I think that's an anomaly. It's a horrible anomaly. But the #1 source of lead poisoning and lead exposure for children is paint and lead dust inside the residential setting. I can say that unequivocally, that's the main concern. But the amazing thing is, when I get phone calls from people, they're always concerned about the water they drink. And it's because it's something you do every day. You drink water, you want to know it's safe. But I can tell you, the real concern is the lead-based paint in the home, and it's a huge concern. This is a map that was made by ODH. It's not fantastic, but those of you who live in the city of Sandusky will recognize these streets. That's a blow-up of this section of Sandusky. This is considered the area in Sandusky that has the greatest probability for lead-poisoned children within the city. It's 18.3 to 27.3% of the children potentially could have that elevated blood level at 5 micrograms per deciliter of blood or above in those areas. And that's basically because of the age of the housing stock there and the condition of the homes and previous testing that they've done. But it's not that much better in the rest of the city either. Those are all also areas that we need to be concerned about. Where are kids being exposed? It's lead-based paint chips in homes that were constructed prior to 1978 and dust on floors and windowsills. Where does that dust come from? It comes from friction surfaces. Every time you open a window or open and close a window, there's lead-based paint dust particles that end up on a piece of dirt in the air and land on the floor. Where do the kids play? On the floor. If they're a toddler, when they stand up, what's right at eye height? The windowsill. We see a lot of cases where kids are chewing on windowsills. That's the traditional story that you hear, and it's the most horrible story. That's where you're going to have the most severe exposures for lead, and those are the most lead-poisoned kids that we deal with because they've got a ready source that they're chewing on every day. But also the dust that's on the floor, it's coated with lead particles. And when they touch the floor, they touch the dust, they put it in their mouth, It's an easy route of exposure. It's that cumulative repeated exposure that takes a 4 to a 5 to a 10 to a 15. Lead paint tastes good. I don't think I ever tasted it. That sounds like a slogan for Coke or something. Lead-based paint tastes good. It tastes like sugar. It's very sweet, and you know how kids love candy. They love lead-based paint if they get a taste for it as well. The other thing they like to do is eat dirt. My kids did it. I don't know why, but they do. But there's lead dust and lead-based paint that's contaminated the soil around these homes that were constructed prior to 1978. These are things that we have to address when we go in and do an abatement process in the HUD grant. We address the soil, we address the windows, we address the doors, we address the trims on the staircases, especially friction surfaces in the house. That's the worst thing. Children and pregnant women absorb 5 times more lead into their blood and their bones than the average adult. Most adults absorb up to 10% of lead they ingest. But children between birth and 6, they absorb up to 50% of the lead. So they're much more efficient of taking lead into their bloodstream and into the bones of their body. That puts them at risk. And what does it do? It interferes with the way they develop. They're never going to reach their full potential, and in the worst cases, it can even lead to death. These are some examples of lead-based paint. On the right here, this lower one, this is the best example. You see this crocodile skin look? This is a home, one of our projects in Sandusky. I'm not going to say which one, but that's typical. Inside and outside a house, if it looks like that, it's probably lead-based paint. And how much of that does it take to lead poison a child, to cause a lead poisoning? The amount is the size of a baby aspirin. That would get you to a 5 microgram per deciliter in the blood. And 2 of those would get you to 10 micrograms per deciliter. So that's all it takes. And these kids have a ready supply of it, and again, it tastes great. On the left, you can see in the upper right-hand corner, that's a completed project right there. These posts that are in here, that was all chipping paint. That's all been encapsulated with a project called EcoBond, or lead block. It's a very resilient product that actually encapsulates the surface, so you could poke a knife in it and the surface will just come back to where it was before. It's very resilient stuff, and it'll protect for the life of the surface. And you can actually paint over the top of it. That's a lot of what we're doing in these homes, a lot of encapsulation and a lot of enclosure. This was a porch that was just covered with lead-based chips. We removed the chips. They're removed in a sanitary way that's approved by HUD, and then we enclose it with a new surface that they can paint over and make it look nice as well. That's one of those electrical boxes. This was an old fuse box that was ready to, it's like a time bomb. In the end, it's going to cause a fire, but that's something I wanted to just throw that in there for healthy homes. Lead hazards, chipping paint, friction surface, that's number 1. Doors and windows, opening and closing, it's putting this into the child's environment, and this is something that occurs every day in almost every home. Children's play areas. If you've got a swing set that's next to a garage that's got chipping, peeling paint, that's where they are. It's going to get into the dirt. There's a source of exposure there as well. And also the soil. They love to eat dirt. I don't know why, but they do. What's the problem? In the city of Sandusky, we have about 11,000 homes. And I'm sure if I'm wrong on that number, someone in this room can correct me. But it's about 11,000 homes and approximately 4,000 rentals. A high percentage of those rentals have chipping and peeling paint inside and out. It's a hazard. How do we eliminate these hazards and protect kids between birth and 6 years of age when they're most vulnerable? That's something that our agency is very concerned about, and we've been working with the city of Sandusky, and they've been great about it, just engaging in this discussion in that we want to find a way to protect kids in their homes where they're likely to become exposed, and also make sure they live up to their full potential. If we can prevent a lead poisoning when the levels are between 3.3 and 4.9 micrograms per deciliter above, they'll never have those lifelong concerns. They'll be able to reach their full potential. It'll be good for the community. It'll be good for everyone in Sandusky. But it's a big problem, and it's something that we want to work to address moving forward in 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Eglin. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Waddington.
I talked to Mr. England prior to the meeting, and I had stuff that I collected over the years from '07. In 2010, Erie County got 3.1 million, correct?
Yep.
A grant for that, and that did what, about 200 houses back then? Majority of them was
220 houses.
Okay,
We had
okay.
2 grants, so
Right.
400 and
can't
some
be-
homes.
So I guess my point is, you can't be healthy if your home is sick, correct? If you got an older home, this has to be resolved.
If your home was constructed prior to 1978, more than likely it has lead-based paint in it. There are some homes that don't, but it's usually because we did work in them in one of the previous grants.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
Mr. England, at various times, throughout our history, we've gotten grants. I know, I want to say back in 2011 when I was on this commission, we got about $3 million the county did, and the vast majority of that was spent probably in Sandusky also.
Yep.
Ultimately, what's the solution? And I understand that throwing money at it, or appropriately throwing money at it, is certainly makes a difference, but is it, can we continue to do that? Where those funds at some point are going to run out? Is it education? Is it code enforcement? Do we need to get on the muscle with stronger code enforcement to get into these homes, identify these problems, and find a way to remediate it that direction? Or is it a combination of education, code enforcement, and hopefully continue to get federal grants?
I would start with education. That would be number one, and that's what I'm doing here today, and that's what I will continue to do. But the other thing would be partnerships. Every program I've ever worked in that's been successful has been partnerships. A lot of what we do in this grant involves match. I have partnerships with people, and they give in-kind support, and they give actual dollar support to the program.
Yeah.
But getting that buy-in ahead of time is crucial. Working with the homeowners, working with the landlords, discussing these issues, and getting them to take proactive, safe steps. Because if you go in and you address hazards in any of these homes, you can actually make the situation work if you don't use lead-safe practices, which it's actually required by federal law. That anyone who works in a home use lead-safe practices so they don't contaminate living areas. But I think it's a combination of all three, in that we need the partnerships, we need the buy-in, we need a program that defines how things should be conducted and what the obligations are, say, for a landlord when they have a home. And I think it's a multifaceted approach to address this huge issue, because as I said, we're going to do 80 homes in 3 years. If I get the next grant, we can do 160 homes to 200 homes. It's not even close to 4,000 or 15,000 homes that we're talking about within the city of Sandusky. We need to think of a better approach to address this serious concern, but I think there's an answer. And I think there's a way to do it that gets the buy-in and gets the support of everyone involved.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
have we tracked, is there any mechanism to track the learning disabilities caused from lead poisoning? Have we started anything in that in Erie County as far as follow-up with that? And then my second question would be, how many mothers have lead poisoning, pass that along to the babies? I'm glad to hear that you were doing testing babies. I don't think that happened years ago, did it? As far as
Well, I can tell you that mothers are, they're a perfect vessel for protecting children. Even in homes where there are the risk of lead poisoning is there. I think a mother is less likely to chew on paint and expose themselves the way a 0 to 6-year-old. So the risk is less. It's still there though, because it's going into their blood and it's picked up readily and taken to the newborn fetus. But are we tracking that? Yes, we are. A lot of that information is protected by HIPAA though, because you can't talk about names and places and homes. But what we do see is that when children become lead poisoned, seriously lead poisoned, it's years to bring their blood levels down. And it's years where they're not living a normal life and going to school and learning the things they need to do to become successful, prosperous adults. And it usually costs a lot more because these kids are spending a lot of time in hospital. And every day you spend in hospital, if you've had family members in hospital, it gets to $1,000 or $10,000 real quick if you're there for 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Twine.
Thank you for that presentation. There's some really alarming information in there, especially regarding children. We want to keep our children safe here in the community. I don't know I believe one important thing you mentioned was partnerships. I believe somehow the city needs to get involved to see that there's some type of way that we can develop some type of partnership with the county through maybe our compliance department or something like that. I'm not sure, but I think we should explore some way to do that.
That sounds fantastic.
Mr. Poole.
Mr. Chairman, the material you talked about for encapsulating, it's not a paint, it's something else. Is it?
It's considered a paint, okay, but it's more resilient than paint. It's a polymer-based, it's kind of a rubberized coating. How much
more expensive is it than regular paint? What's it cost?
It's about 10 times more expensive. It is expensive, an expensive product, but it really does the job that you need it to do. It's hard to work with in that it's like a glue. Okay. But the great thing about it is it provides a perfect surface for normal paint to go over the top of. So you can actually use this product and then paint over the top of it, and you can't tell you use the product at that point.
Okay, one last question.
Sure.
The 31 kids that you discovered at the event this summer?
It was actually 40 kids with exposures. 8 of those had case management, 1 or 2 were lead poisoned, and then 31 were actually in that no man's land that we worry so much about.
Okay, when you did the follow-up research on that, did the data or whatever you discovered, does it support the concept their living environment did cause this? You definitively determined that from your
for those parents that we were able to engage, and sometimes it's difficult. As much as you can lead people towards the solution to a problem, sometimes they don't always engage with you as much as you'd like, and that's a failing on our part, and we keep trying. But for those that we engaged, it's easy to document the hazards. And sometimes the exposures aren't at home. Sometimes they're at grandma's house. Sometimes they're at the babysitter's house. And sometimes it takes a little bit of work to connect the dots and figure out exactly where that exposure is occurring. But I can tell you, yes, it's not hard to, in the cases that we see when we do the follow-up, it usually doesn't take long to find a source of lead-based paint.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions or comments? I guess I would say, Mr. Englund, to wrap this up, we're not doing nearly enough. That's not your fault. That's society at large's fault. This is a silent health crisis for the most vulnerable members of our community. And the consequences of that health crisis are enormous. It obviously impacts their health, their learning abilities, test scores in schools. There's a higher rate of incarceration for those who are exposed to lead, significantly reduced earnings potential over the course of an entire lifetime. This is an easily avoidable problem if we figure out the right solution. And I embrace the approach that you have talked about and that Ms. Twine talked about, and that is having a partnership to try and help and try and have everyone be part of the solution and finding a way to do this. I want to do this the right way And we are looking to the health department's guidance. You are our health department. By the way, a lot of folks don't know this, but for many years, it was the Sandusky Erie County Health Department in name. And it was a merger of the two health departments, and we appoint almost half the members of the combined board these days. And so it's very important that we partner with you as well. And we are appreciative of the engagement, and I know there are different approaches that a lot of different communities have tried, some more successful than others. We want to get a good solution, but we desperately need a solution. The numbers that you showed of those tested at Kids Fest, if I did the math right, about 10% of those kids were at a level of significant alarm. And that is extended across an entire school-age population of some 2,500 in that neighborhood, indicates that we have potentially hundreds of children who are lead poisoned or potentially going to be disabled as a result of exposure to lead. So I thank you for your continuing education efforts, for continuing to highlight this issue, and look forward to your help in guiding us toward a sensible solution. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. I think it's a worthwhile effort, and I appreciate you inviting me here tonight to at least discuss what we've discovered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we turn now to audience participation on any of our agenda items. If there is anyone present who wishes to address any of our items, please step to the microphone, give us your name and address, and share with us your thoughts.
Sharon Johnson, 1139 5th Street. I'd like to comment on the agenda item for the medical marijuana plant going in where the Sunoco station is on the west side. I have two concerns. That corner is a high-profile corner. It's the gateway into Sandusky. I think that's a poor position to advertise that plant there coming into town. Secondly, I'm concerned what will happen to that plant if Ohio decides to legalize marijuana. I'm very concerned about that, especially in that high-profile corner. I'm just against this. It's just a foot in the door for other things to happen. Thank you.
Anyone else present wishing to address any of our regular agenda items? If not, then will someone please please make a motion to address the communications from staff?
So moved.
Second.
And a motion, second discussion. Without objection, the motion be approved. In hearing no objection, the motion is approved. We have our consent agenda items. Commissioners, anyone wishing to withdraw and separately discuss any of the items A through I? If not, then would someone, Mrs. Cresser, would you present the consent agenda items?
Yes, I will.
That was a good nod of the head, timely nod of the head.
Item A on the consent agenda is a transfer of property located at 2012 Columbus Avenue to the Erie County Land Reutilization Corporation. Item B is a contract with the Erie County General Health District for bulky and solid waste vehicle inspections. Item C is for disposal of unneeded items and vehicles. Item D is a change order for the Amtrak depot renovation and modernization project. A change order of $1,490 increase. Item E is the purchase of bulk highway de-icing rock salt for calendar year 2018. Item F is a number of ordinances for chemical purchases for Big Island Waterworks and the wastewater treatment plant for calendar year 2018. Item G is a change order, number 2 and final, for the powder activated carbon system improvements project at the Big Island Waterworks. Item H is a first reading for a contract with Great White North for the Dragon Boat races in 2018. And item I is payment for property and casualty insurance with Arthur J. Gallagher for 2018.
Would someone care to make a motion with respect to those items?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brady.
I would like to make a motion to accept The consent agenda, items A, B, C, D, E, F. Items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 contained in items F. Items G, H, and I. And declaring that all ordinances or resolutions as drafted and presented to the City Commission under the consent agenda shall take effect in accordance with the section reflected in their ordinances or resolutions, whether it be in Section 13 or Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
It's been a motion and second. Discussion. I want to just make a note. This consent agenda item process, consent agenda process is working pretty well. We have an increasing amount of legislation these days. All of this is published, available to the public, available to all the commissioners. We tonight are avoiding having 28 relatively, well, we'll have 2 roll calls, but we will avoid having 26 relatively time-consuming and uneducating roll call votes, because there isn't any dissension about this. But I will and do miss having Mrs. Cresser read the names of all those chemicals used by the water treatment plant. It has been a great deal of fun. You want to do it just for old time's sake? And
No, but thanks for asking.
You don't want like sodium permanganate. How's that?
unless there's any further discussion, Ms. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinances and resolutions.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady? Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Those ordinances and resolutions are adopted. Item 1, please.
Item number 1 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a 3-year agreement with the Erie County Sheriff for the provision of public safety dispatching services for the city of Sandusky Police, Fire, and Service Departments commencing on January 1, 2018 through December 31, 2020, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion? Chiefs, anything to add? Chief Orzak, you and I had an exchange, I guess it was late last week, and you put it in some context in terms of the amount of money that we have been able to save with this coordinated dispatching service, and it's really quite phenomenal. I think this has really worked out well in terms of both what we pay for it and the enhanced level of service that we're getting out of it.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
I had the privilege in 2007 as to serve as the chairman of a group called the Police Participation Committee, which was actually the forerunner of bringing certain parties together to make this regionalism happen. I failed to mention that during my recent campaign for this office. So I would appreciate it, Chief Orzak, if I ever run for political office again in this community, if you'd remind me of that.
I'll be happy to.
Thank you.
You're done, Brady. We can stick a fork in you.
I am done. I am done. Done like dinner.
Further questions or comments? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady? Mr. Waddington?
This is adopted. Mr. Brady, when I was listening to the presentation by the Bicentennial Commission, I was thinking about that whiteout, and I wanted to remind you before I forget that you'll want to get your old Fantasy Island suit out for that occasion. With Mr. Rourke, was it?
I still have some of those clothes.
I figured you probably did. I just threw my, you can get them out of the back of the closet. Item number 2, please.
Item number 2 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a second amendment to the agreement for services of consultant John A. Fike for calendar year 2017, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Now on the ordinance?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 3, please.
We're going to, skip to item number 4, which is an ordinance declaring that certain real property owned by the city located at 2513 Venice Road and identified as parcel number 58-01990.000 and located at 1651 Tiffin Avenue, identified as parcel number 58-02419.000, are no longer needed for any municipal purpose, and authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement to sell the designated real property to the Forest Sandusky LLC, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We have here a couple of representatives of the forest, Eric Vaughn and Brandon Lido. Lido? Okay, thank you. Welcome, gentlemen.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity and the time tonight. My name is Eric Vaughn. I'm the CEO of The Forest. I have with me Brandon Lina, who is our Public Affairs Director here from Columbus. And there's a lot of material in the presentation. I'll move quickly through it. I'm obviously happy to go back for any Q&A on any specific points. But first, timeline. We're at a very exciting and historic time in Ohio right now. On September 8th, 2016, medical marijuana was legalized through House Bill 523, passed in the House and the Senate, signed by Governor Kasich. Right now, the Board of Pharmacy is accepting applications for 60 retail dispensary locations where patients can go to get this medicine as recommended by a doctor. The application submissions are due this Friday, November 17th, and license awards will be granted around March and April of this year, and the first patient in Ohio will be served on September 8th, 2018. With this program, up 29 districts, I believe, and based on population, gave a certain number to each district. So in Northwest District 8, there will be 2 dispensaries in the 4-county region, including the city of Sandusky. The Pharmacy Board oversees the retail dispensary portion of the program. Just for your own edification, the Department of Commerce oversees the cultivation and processing and laboratory services, and the Medical Board oversees the physician part of the program. And the core through everything that the Department of Commerce, Board of Pharmacy, Medical Director, or Medical Board does, it's all about the safety of the public and access to a safe medical product, and then the ability to scale this program as patient needs grow. And for those not familiar with the law, the only Ohio residents who are going to be eligible to receive this medicine, if recommended by their physician, are those with one of these 21 qualifying conditions. And it's because of these patients. It's because of, I'd be surprised if anyone in this room wasn't impacted by loved ones with cancer, with PTSD, the opioid crisis that has ripped through the country, and specifically Ohio. This is a gateway out for doctors prescribing pain-killing medicine to patients with severe chronic and intractable pain. And it's because of the patients on this list that 90% of Ohioans are for medical marijuana when recommended by a physician. And that's why House Bill 523 passed. A little bit about our group and the team that we put together to take advantage and to be a part of this historic moment in Ohio. Myself, Eric Vaughn, my background is in finance and economics. I was a partner at a little research firm in Cleveland called Cleveland Research Company. I left there after 11 years this spring. Got 3 little kids, 8, 7, and 4, so that I could be all in on this effort. My other partner is Brad Maloof, is the CEO of a company called Amware. It's a trucking and supply chain logistics company. And Pat McManaman, who is a partner of mine at Canisure, which is an insurance brokerage that services only the cannabis industry, writes property, general liability, and product liability for operators through the supply chain in the 29 states where this is legal. Also, key advisors, Jared Maloof is our CFO, our financial advisor. He's the CFO of PSC Metals, and our legal representation, our general counsel, Kevin Murphy at Walter Haverfield, which is, in our mind, the prominent firm in the cannabis space, not only in the Midwest, but on the national stage as well. In total, we're going for the maximum of 5 locations across the state of Ohio, including we would love to have one in the city of Sandusky. A couple other key advisors, Denver Relief Consulting. These are the experts in the space that have operated their own dispensaries in Colorado and have now been partners in launching and auditing and running in, this is the 13th state and 13th jurisdiction, including Canada and Puerto Rico, where they have run these operations. I mentioned I have Brandon here with me tonight. Brandon, as you can read in his bio, has been integral for the legalization of Ohio medical marijuana program. It is also a great resource for us in Columbus. He and his firm also set up the industry association that will be helping us to set this industry up. And we also have the Marijuana Policy Group is an exclusive advisor and a partner of ours. These are the folks that handle the seed to sale data in the state of Colorado to report to the Colorado Marijuana Enforcement Division. So this is where we get all the information that we have. This is where all our projections come from. It's from the operations in these states from all of these partners. And this, in really small print here, this is just to give you a scope of every one of these positions is an individual that's listed on our application on our advisory board. And so you can see we have our veteran advisory, and I don't have the names included here. This will all be public record after we submit the application through the department or the Board of Pharmacy, so you'll be able to see who all these individuals are, and I'm happy to share them offline. But the ones on the bottom, the cannabis industry experts we've brought in from out of state, all the other operations, medical, community relations, and veterans advisors, these are all Ohio residents from traditional industry that we've brought onto our team. Because frankly, this is the kind of offering that you have to have. This is the breadth and depth of expertise you have to have in order to be granted one of these licenses because of how rigorous the process is that the Board of Pharmacy makes you go through to the benefit of residents of Ohio and communities of Ohio. Anyone that gets these awards has needs to have this kind of a quality of breadth and depth of the team. And just a sample of what the facility is. A patient comes in, they spend about 20 minutes on site. They check in with the security guard, take their the card that they've received from their physician. Our check-in agent will verify that they're on the state registry. They will then come in through a secure door into a secure waiting area. From there, they will then be grabbed by one of our dispensary agents and have a one-on-one consultation. It can be the patient or the caregiver that's designated. And our highly trained dispensary agents will then help them with what the proper kind of medicine is for whatever their qualifying condition is and whatever their prior patient-reported outcome surveys that they have filled out. They will help through that process. We'll see about 300 patients a day when it's mature, and got about 10 to 20 employees on site depending on the time of the week. Another big, really important thing, one of the great things about having data at our hands now in the other states is we get to lose that stereotype of who it is you think that's going into this store. And what you find, this is data from Illinois from our partners at Marijuana Policy Group. 50% of the patients coming in are over the age of 51 years old. And again, this is touching a small, specific segment of the Ohio population. It's about 2% of the population that will be eligible for recommendations from their physician for this medicine. And you know, this is a too small to see sample layout in case we wanted to go through any of the patient flow in the Q&A. And then just to get an example of what these facilities look like, you know, I always try to say, you know, think Apple Store. You know, these are very clean, very simple, very beautiful buildings that we're designing to put up. This is an example in Nevada that our consultants designed and launched. Here's one in California. Just to get a sense for the interior. And for the exterior, there's actually very specific rules from the Board of Pharmacy and from the Ohio Medical Marijuana Control Program on what you can and can't do. Everything from the size of the sign to what you can say. You can't have anything, there will be, not like in Colorado when you see the green crosses, there's no crosses, there's no signage outside the building. You're limited to, I think it's 18 inches unless it's a fixture of the building. And so this is a very nondescript, beautiful, about 4,000 square foot building that's going to look something like this, or something like this, or this is another example in Colorado that's one of the strong operators that we think does a good job. And so I know that's a lot of information. That is what we would love to bring here to the city of Sandusky.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions and comments? I'm sorry, did I cut off your presentation?
No, that was it. Yeah, no, thanks.
Ms. Lloyd.
Mr. Vaughn, thank you for the great presentation. I think it's really important for us to be educating our residents that you have the medical requirement to be able to dispense it. I'm actually a pharmacist and was in Colorado when it became legal there. So I was able to personally see the benefit of what you're doing can have on patients. And I think it's important that we support this just so we can care for our residents and everyone in the county as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add to that, in terms of that medical component and the card and the importance. I mean, you don't have people carrying that card unless they've gone to their physician and that physician has recommended them. And only the state medical, OSMA, the Ohio State Medical Association, has been designated as the entity that will certify those training programs that every single doctor then has to go through. So, this isn't just kind of back alley kind of medical clinics. I mean, you've got to go through something that's been certified by the State Medical Association. And it's a course that each doctor is going to have to take before they can actually recommend medical marijuana. So the state has done a very good job of ensuring that this is a highly regulated, highly controlled operation.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Lloyd.
Just to follow up on that, and that's a good point of the state has a lot of control on it because the Board of Pharmacy has been very, very active with like the opiate addiction and all of that. So I'm sure that they're taking the proper steps to make sure that everything will be okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Am I on?
Come on.
I'm going to support this because of cancer patients, folks with chronic pain. There's got to be a different avenue for this. I think it's safer than some of the opiates that's being used, and folks that's getting hooked on that. I guess my last question would be, what's the number of employees going to be?
Sure, it'll scale. It'll be about 10, 12 at first, and you'll probably get to 25, 30 at the mature market spot.
And then one quick question. Sure. What type of income would that be? Is that going to generate?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a combination of entry level is $15 an hour approximately with benefits. Okay. These are highly trained employees we put a lot of training into and want to see low turnover. And then we'll also have higher level management, and depending on how many licenses at the corporate level that we get, we'll have those back office positions as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Lockhart.
I guess two things that I would have to say is one, I looked at medical marijuana in the sense that in the states that medical marijuana has occurred, the use of opiates have decreased quite a bit. And then secondly, for that area, that particular location that we're discussing, I would want to ask you and make sure that what you may construct there is appropriate for the area, that it's an improvement. That's a pretty big swath of property and has been said to be pretty prominent. So, what are your thoughts on that? How you develop that? Is that going to be something? Do you have that even conceived at this point that it's going to be something that looks appropriate for the neighborhood, something that enhances?
Absolutely, and that's where that'll be. And we don't share the details of the plans just because they're not public yet, and it's such a competitive process. But those then will become public record. What our plans are for it, and of all the things that I worry about, how beautiful this building looks isn't one of them, because we know that in this industry we have to go above and beyond what people think in order for people to gain acceptance of what this is. We're aware of what the old stereotypes are, and so what we have is, and on a nice plot of land like that, we have an ability to put in great patient access with ADA parking and plenty of it, and a great patient flow where patients of all kinds can be brought in a secure fashion. And that's the beauty of, instead of using an existing building, we actually get to draw out what the best patient experience is through this. And so what you're going to end up with is a building that looks kind of like the couple that I showed, pretty nondescript from the outside and very nice on the inside.
Mr. Chairman. Ms. Twine.
Can you talk a little bit about your dispensing to patients that have the qualifications and that type of thing?
Sure.
But what form? It's not the recreational marijuana that you smoke. So can you talk a little bit
Sure.
about what form of medical marijuana it is?
Sure. The consumption by the patient will be predominantly through vaporizers. So you can take the flower and put it into flower vaporizer pens or units, and then you'll have oil vaporizers as well that have cartridges. And then we also have a number of other transdermal patches. You have tinctures that can go into liquids. You have different forms of edibles, which can be the lowest cost option. Those will be a lion's share of what it is. It's mostly those kind of vaporizers, edibles, and oil-based products.
And the state has to approve all of those products.
Okay.
So, in the event that we're working with on the cultivation side gets a processing license, any product they produce, they have to get state approval for the name, for the look and feel of the packaging, for the dosage. All that stuff is real heavily regulated by the state.
So it comes into your facility already packaged, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And to the commissioner's point about the opioids, I thought I'd mention a couple months ago there was a Johns Hopkins University study, and there's been folks involved in the medical marijuana industry have touted kind of these types of benefits as it relates to the opioid crisis, but there hasn't until recently been real solid data that's been generated here in the United States because of the federal illegality of marijuana, and it makes research very difficult. But there was a study a couple of months ago by Johns Hopkins that said that for states that they studied that legalized medical marijuana, they actually saw a 25% decrease in opioid overdose deaths. And I think that's the beginning of a lot more data and research that's being done now as we see 28 states in the United States have legalized medical marijuana. It's really opening up the door to some of those research opportunities to be able to further study medical marijuana and its benefits.
Additional questions or comments, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman. I really only had to get to page 2 of your presentation to understand how important this is. When I look at the problems that medical marijuana can aid with in the health department, that certainly I believe that is certainly the correct direction to go. The fact that we will sell a parcel of property that we've had an issue with over some time now is certainly a plus. And the real plus is also that we will be creating 10 jobs within the city of Sandusky. I think all those things warrant a favorable vote on this ordinance.
I like what you saw on page 2, but the first one listed is Alzheimer's. Did you get past that?
I can't remember.
Mr. Poole.
That's fine.
Okay. Gentlemen, you are welcome in our community, and I wish you luck. We should understand that this is a conditional sale. It won't go through unless you actually receive the license that you're seeking. Were this any place else in the city owned by the city or not owned by the city, I would be in support of this, but I don't support this at this location. It's right across from the Catholic Cemetery, and since it's a sale by the city, that's enough to tip the scale for me. I'm not violently opposed to it, It just doesn't seem like the right use of this gateway piece of property, and it doesn't seem right across from the cemetery. So I will be a yes on the motion, but a no on the legislation itself. And I've made my colleagues aware of that, and I respect their position, but I just come out in a different place. Further questions or comments? Mr. Cressler, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
No.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 5, please.
Item number 5 is a resolution approving a modified heavy truck route schedule for the city of Sandusky and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd?
I move for the adoption of this resolution under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Then a motion and second. Discussion. Mrs. Cressler, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
And now on the resolution?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That resolution is adopted, and it's worth emphasizing just for a moment. This truck schedule, or this truck route, applies to vehicles that are going through. It's a through, a prohibition against through traffic. It is not a prohibition against trucks going to a destination on that particular road. That becomes confusing sometimes, but that's what you've explained, Mr. Klein. Ms. Cressler, item number 6, please.
Item 6 is a resolution declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed Gartland Avenue reconstruction project, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of cost thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this resolution under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion.
Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
Ask Mr. Klein to give us just a brief rundown of what we're doing out on Gartland Avenue. It's like, that is a lot of money, but I know that entails a lot of work and it is a complex project, to say the least.
Mr. Klein.
Through Mr. President, this is a road that we all definitely know needs resurfaced and reconstructed as far as driving, but when you get down into it, we have what's called an over-under sewer out there, which means that the storm sewer is directly above the sanitary sewer. When the sanitary fills up, it then fills up the storm sewer as well. So it's an environmental problem out there. We have these at many locations throughout the city. So getting into it, we're going to replace the sewer as well, both of them. We're going to completely abandon those two, that system that's out there. We're going to put a brand new storm sewer in and a brand new sanitary sewer. With that, we have to run new laterals to each property as well. So there's going to be a significant cost for the sewer side. Then we have a 6-inch water line out there as well. And per EPA requirements these days, the minimum size water line is 8-inch. So we're going to be replacing that 6-inch water line and running the new services up to each property. Some of them might be older ones that have the lead-based lines that go from the main to the curb stop. So we'll be going all the way up to the meter at each property as well to replace that section. So there is quite a bit of work. One other thing that we're going to do as alternates, we're going to look at resurfacing the Jefferson Street side, which is that little stub between Huron and Gartland, just at the north end. We are going to be including some drainage work at the corner of Jefferson and Huron as well. We get 4 to 6 inches of water during a normal rain event at that intersection, so there's a lot of standing water. We're also going to be looking at looping the water line along Jefferson as alternates. So those are things that hopefully we get good pricing on this. We do know that there's quite a few contractors that are interested in a job of this size. As part of this, we're not only going to be doing the underground utilities, we're resurfacing, we're putting a brand new roadway in, curb and gutter, new drive aprons, all new sidewalks on both sides of the street. And we're also going to be, for the residents that are interested, replacing the curb trees that have completely damaged the existing sidewalk out there. So,
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, just one. Would you expand a moment about, you talked about the environmental hazard dealing with the over-under. Would you expand on what that actually is, what it mean, the hazard? I mean, what bad comes from this, besides just overflow?
Through you, Mr. President. These over-under sewers, the sanitary out there, which is the lower one, is only 8 inches in diameter. The upper sewer is 10 inches in diameter. So obviously the lower one's not going to be able to have as much capacity. You referenced the overflows. That's the main problem with them, is that when that sanitary sewer, there's a lot of infiltration, mostly through the laterals, the storm and sanitary laterals, the private ones. And when it rains, that sanitary fills up, it goes up the manholes and gets into the storm sewers, so then it goes down and goes to an overflow. So now you have a combination of sanitary and storm water going to the overflow. If it doesn't fill up and get to the overflow, then all that water goes right to the wastewater treatment plant. We have to now treat that combination sanitary and storm, so we're spending the extra chemicals and energy and all that other costs at the wastewater treatment plant to handle that flow as well.
Okay, additional question. On the laterals, are we going to encapsulate those, that sleeve? We're going to sleeve them? Because you talked about, you indicated that's where the water's, what the cause of the problem is currently.
We can go up to the right-of-way.
Okay.
But from the right-of-way to the house, we can't get into. So that, sometimes if they're old clay lines, if they're, some of those houses are kind of old. This is common throughout any city of this age, is those private portions of those laterals from the right-of-way to the house. If there's a tree planted over them, those roots find it, break it up, and that's where the water's getting in the system. So we're going to do our part and replace everything we possibly can.
To the street. We're not going to the house. When you said laterals, I thought,
we're going all the way.
I misunderstood you. Okay.
We're going to the right of way.
Will the homeowners, is there anything the homeowners can do at that time in conjunction with what we're doing that's cheaper than doing it without our project? Can the homeowners upgrade their thing? Is there any way we can do that? Homeowners can upgrade?
We had a public meeting several months ago, so we have everybody's contact information out there. My understanding that everybody's very excited about the project, obviously. And so we will let them know that they can contact our contractor, and if the contractor's willing to do the work on their behalf, then they can do that. But it would be a completely separate contract on the homeowner.
Mr. Klein, and thank you for bringing that point out, because I had a question. At what point, is there a point at which we detect somehow a leak on the homeowner's portion of the property, and then if we do that, do we do anything about it?
No, these are all completely gravity sewers, so there's no instrumentation or anything on any of the laterals. So the only way we know is if we were to put flow meters or something on everybody's lateral. What we know is that when it rains, we get a lot of extra water at the wastewater plant. Certain sections of roads throughout the city get a lot of extra water, and we can send our camera up and see what we can see. But we don't have one of those cameras that can actually, it has a smaller camera on top that detaches and then goes up somebody's lateral to see if there are issues. It's going to be on every individual resident to send a camera or hire a plumber to come and take a look in their lateral.
If the homeowner had a problem, is it possible they would see a sinkhole?
In many cases, they could, yes.
Okay, so that would be one way a resident could know they've got a problem that they need to address. Okay, all right. Further questions or comments? Ms. Kress, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Now on the resolution?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That resolution is approved. 7, please.
Item 7 is a resolution declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed Campbell Street resurfacing and Columbus Scott Campbell intersection project, phases 1 and 2, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of costs thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this resolution under suspension of rules in full accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
I'd ask Mr. Klein to give us an overview on the Campbell Street project, and I know from several discussions with Mr. Klein on this issue that if you'd speak specifically, Mr. Klein, to the various pots of money and how they're available and when they're available, that makes this, again, a very complex undertaking to try to pull off.
Sure. Mr. President, as you all are aware, we try every possibility of searching for funds for projects of this magnitude. So last year we came and got $175,000 from OPWC to do the work. Well, that money has to be spent by the end of June of 2018. So what that project was at the time was mostly just a resurfacing of Campbell Street from the railroad tracks to the intersection of Columbus and Scott. We were going to do some improvements at that intersection, but to completely reconstruct that intersection was going to cost a significant amount more dollars at the time. So we knew that was necessary, though. So we went out and we asked ODOT for additional funding through their active transportation program, and we were awarded $125,000 for that. That was only for the intersection. That couldn't be used anything farther south. It was for pedestrian and safety improvements within that intersection. So we worked really hard to try to get ODOT to speed up the process and allow us to use the funds on the same timeline that OPWC was, but that was not possible. So instead of doing one project, we are looking at doing 2 projects. The first one is the one that we're looking for permission tonight to go out to bid, and that would be the resurfacing of Campbell from that intersection of Columbus and Scott all the way to the railroad tracks. When we sent out our sewer and water department, we have had several main breaks, water main breaks within that section of Campbell over the past 16 months. So we are going to be doing some water line work near the railroad tracks. We also have a 3-inch main at the north end of the project that we are looking to replace with an 8-inch main, again, based on the EPA requirements. The sewer, turned out that there's a lot of leaking joints throughout the sewer. So we're going to be replacing manholes and lining that sewer as well. Now, what we had to do, and this gets into item number 8, we hired WSP to do the design work for the intersection. Well, we were going to include that with our reconstruction of Campbell Street, the southern portion of it. When we realized we had to pull the 2 projects apart, some of the work that was going to be done at that intersection was going to be under the new pavement in Campbell. So now we had to go back and ask WSP to pull some of those items out, include them under this contract, and take some of the original items under this contract and put them under that project so we can get the 2 projects working together and not pulling out infrastructure that we just put in. So this became, because of the multiple sources of funding, this became a very complex situation, but one that, when I look at these numbers, we originally had $350,000 for resurfacing. We're still in that range for the resurfacing portion, but we've added the sewer and water line work. And one thing I'd like to point out is when I did go back and look at our 5-year capital plan, we have items in there, one of which is an annual lining project. It's in 2021, but we had $400,000 for a street to be named later. This was one of the streets on the list. So now we're just moving that project up. Same with the water line work. We had 4 water lines under railroads that we needed to replace based on EPA inspections and audits that they've done. And that was another $400,000 project we were looking to do in 2018, which is one of those 4 locations is this piece under Campbell. So it's actually bringing several different projects all together in these 1 or 2 projects. So.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Poole.
I'm always comfortable and happy to support these kinds of projects. The infrastructure under this city is, as we know, we're 200 years old. Some of it's probably at least 100 years. And I'm glad that we take the every opportunity we get that we spend money to improve those things. I think it's important long-term for our rebirth and people wanting to move into the community. And I want to thank Mr. Klein. He does a great job of multitasking and bringing all these projects together and keeping his eye out for when changes or when opportunity presents itself to get money from various agencies to do these things.
Any additional questions or comments? Ms. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Now on the resolution?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
That resolution is adopted. Item number 8, please.
Item number 8 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an amendment to the agreement for professional design services with WSP USA Incorporated of Cleveland, Ohio for the Columbus Scott Campbell Intersection Improvements Project as part of the Campbell Street Resurfacing Project and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Fine, I think you basically are explaining what it is we're doing here in your last explanation, so thank you. And I agree with Mr. Poole. You've proven to be very opportunistic about finding opportunities, so that's a compliment. Unless there are comments or questions on this, Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 9, please.
Item 9 is a first reading for an ordinance amending Part 9, Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code, Title 3, Utilities, Chapter 933, Sewer Regulations and Rates, Section 933.25, Rates of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Sandusky in the manner and way specifically set forth here and below.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the first reading.
Been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
I'd ask Mr. Klein again to just to assure our residents that legislation that we're passing here is definitely not a sewer rate increase. If you can just expound on that, Mr. Klein, you will put a few people's fears to rest.
This, on our utility bill right now, there's a small fee for storm sewers, and right now that is $3 per bill. It is set to change to $3 per ERU, which is a rate unit that is used in the stormwater industry. And what this is doing is this is just keeping everything status quo for the next 2 years. taking that $3 per bill and running it through 2018 and 2019, and actually through 2020 is the next 3 years. So this is something that's just going to keep everything the same, so we can do our appropriate due diligence, make sure we're doing everything right before we go and enact this ERU unit.
And the ERUs primarily have an implication in the commercial context, where instead of being ERU is an equivalent residential unit, and those in the commercial context, those larger properties like my office, for example, would be multiple ERUs, and then the charges would be based upon that.
Yes.
And that's being driven not by something that we dreamed up on our own, but something that the EPA is saying, you in Sandusky and every other community use that as part of your stormwater management.
Yes, sir. EPA is putting more and more regulations with stormwater every year, and the only way to fund that is through those programs and that ERU. So yes, it's equivalent residential unit, and only really affects the commercial and industrial facilities throughout the city.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brady.
I think it's important to publish and to make the public aware also that we're not just sitting on those dollars, Mr. Klein, that we're spending those dollars in relation to improving the water quality, improving the life of our residents. Can you just give us a couple of examples, regarding what we're doing with that $275,000 a year?
Yes, sir. Dear Mr. President, when we did the East End sewer improvements last year, we put in 2 new lift stations. One of the uses of the funds is we bought several trees to make sure that we could line those lift stations and make sure we could beautify the area with those trees. We use some of the money for Lions Park. When we're doing sewer and storm work out there with our catch basins and things like that, we use the money for those. Even we put $25,000 a year towards the forestry program for tree plantings on an annual basis, so whatever that gets us on an annual basis. So, I mean, there are several programs. These dollars are being used in the parks and throughout on any of these green type projects that we're doing throughout the city these days. It was also used at the Jackson Street parking lot.
And that's appropriate because, although you didn't explain it, the more trees we plant, the more moisture, more rainwater is pulled up into the tree, and that's encouraged as a great way to alleviate the stormwater burden. So, additional questions or comments? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the ordinance?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
That ordinance passes on first reading. Item number 10, please.
Item 10 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to expend funds for the purchase of 6 watertight sealed gate containers with mounted bowed tarp systems for the wastewater treatment plant from the Northeast Industrial Manufacturing Incorporated of Greenville, Pennsylvania, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Fine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
It's been a motion and second. Discussion. Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray? Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance passes, and it's more than a little bit curious that no one wanted to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But we discussed it at a prior meeting, and it was a good result. Mr. Wolfster, we turn now to your report, please, sir.
Thank you, Commission President Murray, Commissioners, audience, and staff. I will start with donations. First, a $200 donation was received from the Sandusky Fire Department Local 327 Union to go towards the employee holiday party. And ask for a motion for that donation.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved.
Thank you. A $200 donation was received from an anonymous donor to the police department for Thanksgiving distribution. I'd ask for a motion to approve that donation.
So move.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Without objection, the motion shall be approved. Hearing no objection, the motion is approved with our thanks to the anonymous donor.
Thank you. A $100 donation from Leo Brown for coats for kids for Christmas. I'd ask for a motion for that donation.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved, and hearing no objection, the motion is approved with our thanks to Mr. Brown.
An $800 donation from the Remember Cruising Car Club for the K-9 program, as well as a $6.17 donation from Bryson Whoopser for the K-9 fund. I'd ask for a motion to approve both those donations for the K-9 fund.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. In hearing no objection, the motion is approved with our thanks to the club and to Mr. Whoopser.
The Ohio Department of Transportation made an in-kind donation of 4 12-channel monitors and 6 6-channel monitors worth approximately $20,000 to the Division of Streets and Traffic. Although used, these units are in good condition and newer than most of the city's current stock. I would like a motion to accept this donation, please.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. In hearing no objection, the motion is approved with our recognition for the great working relationship that our engineering department, streets department maintains with ODOT, made that donation possible.
Thank you. And then finally, Construction Equipment has donated 2 platform lifts for the Washington Park and downtown holiday lighting and banner installation. I'd ask for a motion to approve that donation.
So moved.
Second.
It's been a motion and second discussion. Hearing no objection, the motion will be approved with our thanks to Construction Equipment.
Thank you. Moving on to new and old business, starting with the police department. First, I just wanted to note that Clerk Cresser, myself, and Commissioner Twine, as well as a number of members of the police department, had an opportunity on Friday evening to attend an award ceremony held by the local Marines of this area, where our own Chief Orzek was named Marine of the Year for 2017. So commendations to Chief Orzek, and it was clearly a really strong ovation from the crowd, and people are excited. In addition, Officer Zachary Blair was sworn in on November 2nd to a full-time position. This hire brings the staffing level to full staff. We want to give a big welcome to Officer Blair. And also, we will be passing out snowflake wands at the tree lighting ceremony in downtown Sandusky on November 24th. A reminder that the Finance Committee meeting, the final Finance Committee meeting of the year, will take place Friday, December 15th at 7:45 a.m. in the Commission chambers. Also, moving on to Public Works, congratulations to Jared Smith, who's been promoted from a Maintenance 3 to Foreman in the Streets and Traffic Division. We would also like to welcome Brian Booth to the Sewer Maintenance Division and James McIntyre to the Streets Division. A request for qualifications has been issued for the Safe Routes to Schools project for pedestrian improvements around the high school starting in 2019. The Landing Park Plan, which is the green space being planned for the former Griffin Airport space, as part of Cedar Point's Sports Center development, will be discussed at the Planning Commission this Wednesday, November 15th. Funding for the Landing Park Plan was made possible by the city, the Erie Metro Parks, and Cedar Fair. Also, a reminder for our residents who may be concerned about flooding in their homes during heavy rains, a check valve can be installed in your home to prevent this water from entering via the drains. The property owner should contact a licensed contractor to explore their options. For a list of licensed plumbers and a plumbing permit, please contact the building division at 419-627-5940. That's 419-627-5940. Moving on to the Department of Community Development. The Ohio Department of Commerce announced results of the first round of Tier 2 smaller facility medical marijuana cultivation facilities. Tier 2 facilities are those that would initially house no more than 3,000 square feet of growing space. 12 of the 76 applicants were awarded license. No licenses were awarded in Sandusky or Erie County. The larger Tier 1 cultivation facility awards will be announced in coming weeks. Also, construction at the new City Hall facility has commenced, beginning with interior demolition activities. There will be disturbances to traffic flow along Columbus Avenue and pedestrian accessibility along Washington Road and Columbus Avenue. The city will work to minimize sidewalk and Parcel Street closures during the duration of the project and make the community aware in advance of any changes or closures. The regular Planning Commission meeting will be held November 15th at 4:30 p.m. in the first floor conference room. Both the Shoreline Drive and the landing conceptual plans will be reviewed during this meeting. There will be a special Planning Commission meeting on December 5th at 4:30 p.m. in regards to the new Hancock and Ontario schools. A Landmark Commission meeting will be held November 15th, following the Planning Commission meeting in the first floor conference room. And the regular Board of Zoning Appeals meeting will be held Thursday, November 16th at 4:30 p.m. in the Commission chambers. Moving on to public services. Foxborough Park playset has begun. Weather depending, the project should be completed by the spring. And metal roofing for Shoreline is in, and construction is scheduled to begin this week. Closing with recreation. We're excited to announce that the annual Christmas lighting ceremony will take place on Friday, November 24th at 6 p.m. Santa will proceed up Columbus Avenue into Washington Park in Dick and Linda Howell's 1933 Plymouth Rumble Seat Roadster, escorted by the Sandusky Fire and Police Departments. And finally, the Dot the I, Block the M Run Walk will be held at 8:30 a.m. on Saturday, November 25th. It will start and end at Cameo Pizza. Pre-registration is available on the city's website and will be $25 per participant and includes a participant medal and long sleeve t-shirt. Proceeds from the run walk will benefit the United Way of Erie County. Also, this is a very exciting and fun event. I don't know if everyone knows, but our recreation department has creatively figured out a way using our Masonic street grid to carve an O and an M out of the streets, which probably isn't possible is possible in only a few cities in the country, so that people can pick their course based on their allegiance to their favorite team and get some exercise before they watch the big game. So, and I want to give a special thanks to Jason Whirling, it's his brainchild in the rec department. So that concludes my remarks for this evening.
Commissioner, earlier today we talked about, in addition to your report, I think you were going to talk about the wayfinding signage.
Yes. I apologize. We've had some questions about the wayfinding signage. It is in midst of construction, and so there are, I think, 88 total signs that will be constructed, and some of the questions were regarding whether or not routes were finished, as far as that it may sign to someplace and the direction may require either further signage or be pointed in the wrong direction. We're researching that now, but we're confident that with any public project, we'll be on top of the contractor and make sure that it's delivered as appropriate, and we'll stay on top of that throughout that and make sure that we get it right as we go forward.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions or comments for the city manager? Then we will turn to items of old business. Anyone have any items of old business? Any items of new business?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Waddington.
We had a discussion earlier today, and then I talked to you last week, Mr. Brady, about this. I would like to see, I know the greenhouse folks would like to see signage up there. I was on the commission when we saved it in 2007, and this is the 110th year, and I would like to see if we could do maybe in-house or something decorative for our greenhouse for the 110th anniversary.
I think that'd be a great idea. Is that, Mr. Klein, the signage in your department?
I would say that depends.
You've been training with Mr. Harris lately? What's going on?
Get that right?
Mr. Chairman, that's a motion too, so, okay?
That's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and second. So now we can appropriately discuss. Sorry.
I would say our sign department can do metal signs, so it depends on what we're looking for out there. If we're looking to do just a sheet metal sign with something like that, but if we want something more elaborate, then it's going to depend. But we're capable of doing those.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lockhart.
I've been talking about this for about a year now, the Friends of the Greenhouse and the Tree Commission. And they had envisioned something that would be pretty noticeable for the greenhouse to let people know where it is, what it is, and to be more inviting. So it may end up being at their behest, because they're going to be the ones that really take care of the sign and things around it, that it be something a little bit more substantial. But talking to Director Link, he thinks that there's an appropriate size that it should be. So I think the motion is appropriate, but it's going to take a little bit of thought.
Is there a design that I think it's Friends of the Greenhouse that are...
There's no particular design, but some of the things I discussed were something similar to the Lions Park sign, which is a composite sign, I believe. But I believe that Director Link has a size that he thinks it would be more appropriate rather than so large as the one at the Lions Park. It may be smaller, but composite.
Anybody know anybody at a sign company?
Well, funny enough, we discussed that potentially Ability Works might be capable of doing something like that. So,
Mr. Chairman, I think our signage at our significant buildings should be the same. Whatever the most substantial type sign that we use, I'm not sure. Somebody said that there's a sign at the boat ramp, Shelby Street boat ramp. Is there something there that's substantial?
So at most of our facilities, through you, Commissioner President to Commission, most of our facilities, including the service center or the boat ramp, you will see such a sign. It sits on what is a faux limestone base, has two wooden poles that come up, and then in the center of it, I believe the ones that we have are a composite wood type, I'm not exactly sure, and it says City of Sandusky. It has the address, the logo, and then what the location is at the service center. I believe it says service center, so on and so forth. Yeah. That is what to Commissioner Commissioner Lockhart's point was something similar to that is what I would see for our facility.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
I'll refrain from, as I usually do, discussing or voting on this issue, as most of the signs that the city owns has been built by my company.
Okay. Did you have something? Did you? No, I'm sorry. And we have the same sign at the water treatment plant too, I think, if I remember correctly.
There you go.
In style, yeah, that's a good point.
They should be the same.
That's a good point.
Everywhere.
Let's keep it. Okay.
They identify us.
Yep.
That's it.
Okay, so there's, what is the, Mr. Waddington, would you care to rephrase your motion to?
My motion was to have a sign for the 110th year, something for the green house. As I said earlier, we were going to knock it down in 2007. We saved it, okay? Kept it going. That was the 100th anniversary. This is the 110th anniversary this year. And I think it's significant that we have some signage like maybe Shelby Street boat ramp, something along that line.
So something consistent with the.
Yeah, just stay the same, yeah.
Okay.
Nothing, I'm not asking for nothing real fancy. Just keep the same consistency that we need something there.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. With that clarification, is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Additional items of new business. So I have several hearings that need to be set. We need a public hearing set for our November 27th meeting regarding a substantial amendment to the CDBG program. Would someone care to make such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion? Ms. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That hearing is set. We also need to set a hearing at the same meeting, November 27th, regarding a request that we've received to change the name of just a portion of the Shelby Street between Fillmore and Pierce Streets to Ebenezer Crossing. Would someone care to make such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That hearing is set. Finally, we need to set a public hearing for our December 22nd meeting regarding a zoning amendment that's been requested or filed by Firelands Regional Medical Center for parcels fronting Rockwell Street, Hayes Ave, and Pierce Street. Would someone care to make such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion?
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That hearing is set. And finally, commissioners, you have received, Mrs. Cresser distributed before the meeting, a list of the dates of our ordinary meetings in 2017, the commission meetings, and these are, as usual, with one exception, which I will note, the second and fourth Monday of the month, except when that falls on a legal holiday. There's only one such of those in 2018. And then also a modified meeting date and time for the week before Christmas, so that will be set on December 31st, on a Friday at 3 p.m., much as we are doing this year.
December 21st.
What did I say? December 31st, 21st, yes, correct.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
There's actually 3 meetings that would fall on Tuesday in 2018.
Okay, yeah, it's all laid out there. He had to point it out. Okay, I made a mistake. 3. Vicky.
She was so excited. No, just not.
Do we have to approve these, or just
I-
nice? Is this just nice to know in advance?
I think we actually have to
You have
set
to-
the schedule.
According to the rules of order, you have to.
Okay.
Yeah. So would someone care to make such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion, second discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Those dates are set. So we turn to audience participation. Anyone having any items of city business, please step to the microphone, give us your name and address, and share with us your thoughts.
Catherine Carter, 5309 Columbus Avenue. We were talking about the marijuana. I quickly spoke to them when I had to go outside and told them they should also buy the property on Perkins Avenue that used to be a bank, because they can't legally deposit money in the bank, so that would be good for them to buy too. And I've heard a lot of things about that area of town, homeless and things like that. So what happens after everything's okie dokie with this building and what they're doing, and then it goes outside? Are we gonna have people complaining that they're vaping in non-smoking areas because they have a medical issue? Or I know I was watching a thing on TV about the marijuana issue in Colorado, and the one state patrol officer stated that people don't understand how many kids are running to hospitals, emergency rooms, from getting into mom and dad's stash or gummy bears or however they take it. And I hope that when we're talking about bringing this in, we're talking about what happens after people walk out of the door with that, because that can get really serious. And I was wondering, when you're talking about the green space in Griffin Airport, does that still show up on maps and GPS as Griffin Airport, or has that been dealt with?
I don't, I mean, GPS does whatever it's gonna do, so Google Maps, and so I don't know what, I don't know.
Well, I had brought it up earlier this year, and I didn't know who corrects that kind of situation, because we have a lot of issues on our maps that aren't right, and I just thought, I didn't know if anything was gonna be done with that.
I believe the answer is Google is the one that, ultimately is the master of that data set. And I know communities work with Google and with Apple Maps to provide feedback to correct errors. Mr. Klein has done that with respect to different developments or changes in the area, particularly the West Side overpass. They are sometimes faster at responding, sometimes not. I mean, it's an issue for every community.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Cool.
anybody can make a change, can submit a change to Google Maps. You can go home and do it yourself tonight.
I don't compute.
You can. I'm just pointing out anyone can do that. And it takes a while, but they eventually get back to you. I've done it several times on various streets in the city myself.
Okay, that's because
So you know.
that would be a dangerous issue if an airplane had to land and thought it was still there.
I'm looking at the map and I don't see it on here, so I think maybe it's been resolved.
Oh, good, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carter.
It's Google right there, it's not Google Maps.
My name is Aberdare Dantzler. I live at 2042 Rhoda Street. I have been trying to get a tree trim for the last 6 or 7 years. The last time I was here, you told me I was number 27. 27 haven't come up yet. So I was wondering, why can't I get that tree trimmed? Because when you redid Remington, you must have cut a root. All they do is drop little sticks. Before I mow my lawn, I got to go around picking up sticks. I have to have people hauling sticks away, bundles of them. So I want to know what's going on.
Sir, you are misrepresenting the facts.
Beg pardon?
You are misrepresenting the facts. Those trees have been trimmed twice in the last year.
They haven't been trimmed. You made it just come cut the ones under the bottom. I want all those little trims, you know, cut off so they don't be dropping sticks. So I have to pick them up. Dead. They drop them in the street everywhere.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Poole.
may I ask Mr. Link, what kind of tree is it we're talking about?
Oak tree.
A maple?
Oak.
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 Is he finished? Mr. Chair, is Mr. Poole finished?
Yeah, I'm
Thank
done.
you.
For now, I just
okay.
wondered if it's indigenous tree or not.
I'd like to see that, and I'm not sure where the status of it is, but I'd like to see that a tree be evaluated again to see that either it needs to be trimmed or torn or taken down altogether.
Yeah, Mr. I second. So I think we should take care of it, Mr. Chairman. It's been multiple years. Whether it's alive or not, I don't know. It's around the corner from my house, and yes, whatever that is supposedly alive breaks off, falls into this man's yard regularly. So the trimming of whatever, whether they trimmed or not, we wouldn't be having this conversation had somebody simply communicated. If he doesn't think it was trimmed because he never saw them out there, it would have taken very little with as often as he's been down here to make an effort when we decided to go do something to notify him we're going to be there, to see if the customer was satisfied with the work we did. And I see no reason why we don't just cut the tree down. It is obviously a nuisance. And it's now won't be we've got 1 million trees in Sandusky, and they die every day, and we replant, or they get knocked down by the weather. It does. I'm not sure why. After 3 years, this 77-year-old man has to pick up his yard every time just to cut the grass, and it is on a steep embankment that makes it even more difficult. I happen to drive by it every day, and we're not saving anything by keeping these 2 trees or 1 tree to last another year. It just doesn't make any sense. We dealt with this for almost 3 years, 3 or 4 years. Started out, we couldn't figure out if it was on the boulevard or not. That was why nothing was done. And then we give them a date, we're gonna do something, and we should just cut the tree down and move on. Put something nice, new, and be done with it.
Well, I completely disagree, Mr. Poole.
I'm sure you do.
Well, because, I mean, trees are an important part of the urban landscape. These are nice trees. They have been trimmed twice in the last year. And I don't think it's the function of the city commission. It's the function of the tree commission to decide whether a tree should come down. I just don't think that we are particularly qualified to do that, and I don't think that we should do it.
Well, you was qualified to tell me I couldn't cut it down when I was going to cut it down maybe 10 years ago.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I am on the tree commission, and we could take another look at it to see now whether it's dying or it's a hindrance to his property, which could mean that it's either going to fall down, damage property, or going to uproot his driveway or sidewalk. Well, he doesn't have a sidewalk there. I've actually seen the tree. The tree is enormous, and it probably was planted at a time where we weren't looking carefully at what we were planting, making sure of what species is appropriate to be on a boulevard. So I would like the tree commission to take a look at it and make an evaluation of it again. So that was a motion.
Second.
Been a motion second to have the tree commission take a look at the tree.
Yep.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and the tree commission will do that. Anyone else wishing to address the commission? If not, then does someone care to make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We stand adjourned.